Morning of my sister's engagement party, I was elbow deep in flower arrangements at 6 a.m. while she was still asleep. That's not a metaphor. I was literally standing in my parents' kitchen, scissors in hand, trimming the stems off 200 ranunculus because the florist my mom had hired showed up with the wrong variety, and I was the only one who knew how to fix it. My phone had 17 unread texts. My coffee was cold, and somewhere upstairs, my sister Leah was sleeping in until 9, blissfully unaware that the centerpieces for her own party were currently a disaster. Nobody had asked me to fix them, but nobody had to. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who didn't grow up the way I did. There was never a moment where my parents sat me down and said, "You're the responsible one, so you handle everything." It just became true, slowly, the way water shapes a stone. So gradually, you don't even notice the weight until one day you're 31 years old, standing barefoot on a cold kitchen floor, fixing flowers for a party you didn't plan to attend as a guest. My name is Tessa. I'm a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm good at my job, really good, because I'm constitutionally incapable of watching something fall apart when I know I could fix it. My boss figured that out about me within 6 months. My family figured it out about 25 years before that. Growing up, I was the one who remembered things. I remembered that my dad's business partner was lactose intolerant before every company dinner. I remembered that my grandmother needed an aisle seat at church because of her knee. I remembered deposit deadlines and RSVP cutoffs, and that my mother always forgot to order enough ice. Leah, my younger sister 3 years behind me, was the creative one, the spontaneous one, the one who could walk into a room and make everyone laugh within 30 seconds. My brother Cam, the youngest, was just Cam, charming and well-meaning and reliably late to everything. And I was the one who made sure the ice showed up. I don't want to make it sound like my family was terrible. They weren't, not in any dramatic way. My parents loved us. My childhood was normal in all the ways that count. But there's a specific kind of invisible labor that gets assigned to the competent kid in a family, and it almost never gets named out loud, which means it almost never gets thanked out loud either. You just become the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi. People only notice you when you go down. For years, I told myself it didn't bother me. I was good at logistics. Why wouldn't I help? It was just practical. And besides, I liked feeling needed. I won't pretend I didn't. But there's a difference between being needed and being used. And I didn't understand the distance between those two things until the night of my sister's engagement party. The one I had spent 4 weekends planning. The one where I showed up as the help. It started with the venue. Leah got engaged in March. Her boyfriend Owen proposed at a cabin in Tennessee. Which, fine, good for them. It was a beautiful story. My parents were thrilled. Owen's family was warm and enthusiastic, and immediately started talking about combining households for Thanksgiving. Everything was wonderful. About 3 days in, my mom called me. "We want to throw an engagement party in May," she said. "At the house. Something nice but not too formal. You know how to do that stuff." I did know how to do that stuff. That was true. But "you know how to do that stuff" is a very specific kind of compliment. The kind that sounds like praise while it's actually handing you an assignment. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I already had a spreadsheet open before I hung up. What followed was 6 weeks of planning that I absorbed almost entirely on my own. My mom had opinions, but not bandwidth. She was dealing with a complicated situation at her job and kept saying she'd help more once things calmed down. My dad contributed by asking, periodically, if I needed anything, and then not following up when I said yes. Leah was Leah. She sent me Pinterest boards and said things like, "Whatever you think," with 3 exclamation points, which I translated as, "Please don't make me make decisions." Cam forgot I'd even been asked to plan it until about 10 days out when he texted to ask if there would be an open bar. There would be. I had arranged it. I hired a caterer. I created the guest list in coordination with both families. Owen's parents had their own extended network, and I spent an entire Sunday afternoon on a call with his mom, going over dietary restrictions and plus ones. I designed the invitations in Canva, sent them via paperless post, tracked RSVPs in a shared Google Sheet that only I ever actually updated. I rented linens. I arranged for a parking attendant because my parents' neighborhood has narrow streets. I sourced a custom cake from a bakery 40 minutes away because Leah had seen something specific on Instagram. I also, for the record, fixed the flowers that morning. The party was on a Saturday in May. The weather was perfect. One of those Ohio spring evenings where the air is warm but not humid, and the light goes golden around 7. The backyard looked genuinely beautiful. The caterer was on time. Owen's family arrived with wine and big smiles. My parents floated around greeting guests like the gracious hosts they are, and they were wonderful at it. That part I'll give them completely. My parents are warm people. They're good in a room. About an hour in, I was standing near the drink station adjusting the garnish tray that kept getting disorganized when Owen's mother came up beside me. "You must be so proud," she said. "This is just stunning. Leah said you pulled this all together." I smiled. "Happy to do it. She's lucky to have a sister like you." And then she was gone, back to her husband. And I stood there with a lemon wedge in my hand thinking, when did Leah say that? Did she say it to me? She hadn't, not once in 6 weeks. Not a single, "Thank you, this looks amazing," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." I wasn't keeping score, or I told myself I wasn't, but standing there in that golden light, I noticed the absence, like you notice a tooth that's been pulled, the space where something should have been. I didn't let it ruin the evening. I kept moving, kept managing, kept refilling things, and quietly redirecting the caterer's assistant who had started stacking dishes too early. Then they did the toast. My dad stood up with a glass of champagne and gave a beautiful speech about Leah, about how she had always lit up every room, about how Owen was exactly the kind of man he'd always hoped for her, about how proud they were. My mom cried. Cam made a joke that landed perfectly. Owen's dad spoke. Owen spoke. Leah spoke, and she was radiant and funny and said exactly the right things. Nobody said my name, not once, not in passing. Not a, "We couldn't have done this without Tessa," or even just "Thanks to everyone who helped make tonight happen." I stood at the edge of the yard holding my champagne and listened to my family celebrate my sister's love story in a backyard I had transformed. At a party I had built from a blank calendar entry into something real and beautiful, and I was as invisible as the electrical outlets in the walls. I almost let that go too. I'm embarrassed to admit how close I came to just swallowing it. But then my mom found me near the end of the night. "Can you grab the extra dessert boxes from the kitchen and bring them out?" she asked. She was already looking past me at another guest. "The caterer's running low." I went and got the boxes. On the way back out, I passed Leah in the hallway. She was glowing, genuinely, happily glowing, and she grabbed my arm and said, "Isn't this amazing? I can't believe how perfect everything is." "I'm really glad," I said. "Owen's family loves it." She squeezed my arm and let go. "Oh, Mom wants the dessert boxes." She walked back out to the party. I stood in the hallway with the boxes in my hands. I'm not a person who cries easily, and I didn't cry then. What I felt was something quieter and more clarifying, like a lens clicking into focus after years of being slightly blurry. I thought about the 6 weeks. I thought about the Sunday call with Owen's mom. I thought about the florist. I thought about how my name had not appeared in the single spoken word during the toasts at a party that existed because of me. And I thought, I've been doing this my whole life, and they don't even see it. I brought the boxes out. I smiled for the rest of the night. I helped the caterer load the van at 10:30. I drove home, sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building for about 15 minutes, and then I went upstairs and opened my laptop. I didn't go looking for a flight out of spite. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. What I opened was a tab I had bookmarked months earlier, a graphic design intensive in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that ran for 3 weeks in July. I'd been putting it off for 2 years. Too expensive. Bad timing. Couldn't leave work. Couldn't leave my family. I looked at the application. I looked at my bank account. I had the money. I had vacation days I hadn't taken in 14 months. I applied at 11:47 that night. I didn't tell anyone for 3 weeks. In the meantime, I kept showing up to family things. Mother's Day brunch. I brought the dish my mom likes best, the one that takes 2 hours to make. Cam's birthday dinner. I made the reservation because no one else remembered until 48 hours out. A graduation party for a cousin I barely knew, which my mom had volunteered me to help coordinate without asking. "I already told Aunt Renee you'd handle the cake order," she said when she called. "She's overwhelmed. You told her I'd do it without asking me first." A brief pause. "I knew you wouldn't mind." I did mind, but I ordered the cake. The week before I left for Santa Fe, I told my parents of our dinner at their house. I said it simply. I'd gotten into a design program. I was taking 3 weeks of vacation. I was leaving on July 9th. My mom's face did something complicated. July? She said. But that's when we're planning the rehearsal dinner venue visits with Owen's family. I didn't know about that. We were going to talk to you about it. We figured you'd want to be involved. Involved how? She looked at my dad. My dad looked at his plate. Well, she said, you're so good at that kind of thing. There it was. Not, we want you there. Not your input matters to us. Just, you're so good at that kind of thing. I was being recruited again the way you recruit a tool, not a person. The framing assumed my participation. It didn't ask for it. I'll be in New Mexico, I said. You'll need to handle it without me. The dinner was quiet after that. My mom made a comment about how short notice it was. My dad said something vague about hoping the timing worked out. Leah texted me that night she'd heard through the family grapevine, and the text said, Santa Fe sounds fun, but do you really have to go in July specifically? I stared at that text for a long time. Then I typed back, yes. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. I just sent the one word and put my phone face down. Santa Fe in July is extraordinary. I don't know how else to say it. The light there is unlike anything in Ohio. It hits the adobe walls at a certain angle in the late afternoon and turns everything a color that doesn't have a name in any paint catalog I've ever seen. The program was small, 12 people from around the country, and within 2 days I had started to understand what it felt like to be somewhere that nobody needed anything from me. I took a typography class. I took a printmaking workshop. I ate green chili on everything because the locals told me I had to, and they were right. I went on 2 hikes with a woman named Frances from Portland, who was 62 years old and had just retired from 30 years in hospital administration. And on the second hike, she said something to me that I've thought about almost every day since. She said, the hardest thing about being capable is that people stop asking if you want to. I didn't say anything for a while. We just kept walking. I spent 30 years being the person who could handle it, she said. Took me until retirement to figure out that can handle it and should handle it are 2 completely different questions. I thought about my mom saying, I knew you wouldn't mind. I thought about Leah's text. Do you really have to go in July specifically? I thought about standing in that hallway with the dessert boxes, invisible in my own family story. Yeah, I said. I'm starting to figure that out too. I came home in late July. I had a tan from the New Mexico sun and a portfolio of work I was genuinely proud of, and something else that's harder to name. A kind of settled feeling in my chest, like furniture that had finally been moved to the right place. Things were awkward with my family at first. My mom had managed the rehearsal dinner venue visits without me. She'd leaned on Owen's mother, who turned out to be extremely organized and very capable, and the whole thing had gone fine. I think that surprised my mom a little. She mentioned it once, offhandedly. It actually came together okay. I'm glad, I said. A few weeks later, my dad called me on a Sunday afternoon. That was unusual. My dad is not a Sunday afternoon phone call kind of person. He's more of a reply to group text kind of person. He said, "Can I come over?" He sat at my kitchen table and didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Then he said, "I've been thinking about the engagement party." I waited. "Nobody thanked you," he said. "And the toasts, nobody said your name." "No," I said. "They didn't. That wasn't right." He was looking at his hands. "I've been going back through it, and I realize we've been doing that for a long time, assuming you'd handle things. Not saying thank you, not even really thinking about whether you wanted to." I didn't say anything. I was afraid if I talked, I'd start crying, which I didn't want to do. "I'm not going to make excuses," he said. "You're really capable, and we got lazy, and somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing the person and just saw the capability. That's not an excuse. That's just what happened." He looked up then. "I'm sorry, Tessa. My dad is not an emotional man. He was raised by a man who wasn't an emotional man, and the chain goes back a long way. For him to sit at my kitchen table and say those words without deflecting into a joke or an explanation, that meant something. That meant something real." "Thank you," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. Leah called the week after. Her apology was messier. She cried. She went in circles a little. She said, I just always assumed you were fine about 3 times, which is both an apology and an explanation, and also the whole problem compressed into one sentence. But it was real. She wasn't performing. She was genuinely sitting with something uncomfortable, and she stayed on the phone until it was said. My mom took the longest. That's not a criticism, it's just true. She came around in her own way, in pieces, over weeks. She stopped calling me to delegate things without asking first. She started saying, if you're up for it, before making requests. Small shifts. But I've learned that small shifts, sustained, are how things actually change. Big dramatic proclamations are easy to make and easy to forget. Small consistent changes are harder. They mean more. What I didn't expect was Cam. My brother, who I'd always thought of as the oblivious youngest, called me one night and said, "Hey, I just want you to know I see you. I've always known you were the one holding everything together. I just didn't know how to say it, and I'm sorry I didn't try harder." That one got me. I cried a little after I hung up, the good kind. Things are different now. Not perfect. No family is, but different. My mom organized Christmas last year herself, for the first time in probably 15 years. It was chaotic, and she forgot to get enough folding chairs, and there weren't enough serving spoons. And she called me twice in a mild panic, but she organized it. She carried it. When I showed up, I was a guest. I sat at the table, and someone passed me the potatoes, and I just ate them. It sounds small. I know it sounds small. But I sat at that table, and I was a person in my family, not the infrastructure of my family, and I cannot tell you what that felt like except to say it felt like something I hadn't known I was missing until I finally had it. I still go to Santa Fe every summer. Frances and I text sometimes. She's taken up ceramics in retirement, which she says is harder than hospital administration and more satisfying. I'm still a project manager. I'm still organized. I still remember things. But I've stopped organizing things I wasn't asked to organize. I've stopped fixing problems that weren't mine to fix. I've stopped arriving early to situations that would be fine if I arrived on time, because I realized that fine without me is not the same as doesn't need me. Sometimes it just means things find their own level when you stop holding them up. The word no, I've learned, is not a wall. It's a door. On the other side of it is your own life, the one that was waiting for you to show up to it. I spent a long time planning everyone else's parties. These days, I'm more interested in attending my own. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that night, not in any mystical sense, just the plain mechanical kind. The kind where you trace a line backward through your choices and see, clearly, how you built the situation you're standing in. I built mine over years. Every time I said yes without being asked. Every time I fixed something that wasn't my responsibility because I couldn't stand watching it fall apart. Every time I absorbed someone else's dropped ball and called it helping. I was capable, so I acted on that capability constantly, and the people around me adjusted to it. The way you adjust to a thermostat that always keeps the room exactly right. You stop thinking about it. You just expect it to be comfortable. That's not cruelty. That's just what happens when one person's reliability becomes another person's assumption. I don't think my parents sat around deciding to take me for granted. I think they just stopped asking whether I wanted to, because I had never once given them a reason to think the answer might be no. That's the part I had to sit with, not just their blindness. My own participation in it. There's a kind of intelligence that I think gets mistaken for strength. And it goes like this. You see a problem, you solve it, you move on. You do this so many times that it becomes your identity. And your identity becomes other people's infrastructure. And then one day, you're standing in a hallway holding dessert boxes at a party you built from nothing, and your sister floats past you glowing, and not a single person in the room knows your name was attached to any of it. I could have been angry at my family. And honestly, for a while I was. Not loudly, but in the quiet way that sits behind your eyes at dinner and makes you choose your words carefully. But anger at other people for filling the space you kept offering them is a little like being angry at water for flowing downhill. It's just what it does. The harder question, the one that mattered more, was what I was going to do differently. Frances said it best on that trail in New Mexico. Can handle it and should handle it are two different questions. I had been answering the second one with the first one my whole life, and it had cost me something I couldn't fully name until I stopped doing it. Some version of myself that existed outside of what I was useful for. Integrity, I've come to think, is not just about being honest with other people. It's about being honest with yourself about what you actually want, what you're actually willing to give, and what you've been silently resenting because you gave it without being asked. That's not easy. It's easier to just keep running the checklist, keep filling in the gaps, keep being the person everyone can count on. That version of competence feels like virtue. It can take years to realize it's sometimes just avoidance in a very productive disguise. My dad sitting at my kitchen table and saying I'm sorry without deflecting. That took courage. The kind that doesn't announce itself. He didn't come over with a rehearsed speech. He came over because something in him had been sitting with discomfort long enough that he needed to do something about it. That's what moral seriousness looks like in real life. Not grand gestures. Just someone deciding, quietly, to stop looking away. What I know now that I didn't know then, the word no is an act of honesty. Setting a limit is not abandonment. Letting people carry their own weight isn't cruelty. It's respect, for them and for yourself. My family didn't fall apart when I went to Santa Fe. They figured it out, and in figuring it out, they became more of themselves, which means I had been, without meaning to, taking that from them too. I'm still organized, I still show up. But I show up as a person now, not a service. And the difference, I can't overstate how much the difference matters.